Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to Drums and Drams. My name's Cameron and today we've got another blind whiskey review here on the channel. In today's video, I'm just gonna reach my hand over into my blind sample box, pull out a random blind sample. This one is B258814, which means it's a batched product from 2025 with a random 4-digit number there at the end. And while I get this poured out, I will put a reminder along the bottom of the screen of what it is I'm actually taking a look at in today's video. So just a quick reminder of how this is gonna work. I have no idea what's in this sample bottle and what I'm actually reviewing today. I'm gonna go through and taste it, talk about the entire thing, nose, palate, finish, and give it a score out of 100 before I ever find out what is in my glass. And then at the end of the video, once I've locked all of those things in, solidified my opinion about this whiskey, I will do the final reveal for myself from one of these many reveal cards that I've got for all the samples in this box. So it's a great way for me to give you a full, unbiased review of whatever this ends up being. So I need to find the reveal card right now so that I can do the big reveal at the end. So we're gonna make a hard cut right here. All right, so I've got the reveal card here for B258814. We'll save that for the end of the video. I'm gonna fully coat my glass now. And honestly, as I look at this thing, it looks like a pretty dark whiskey. So that's very exciting. I'm already starting to think about maybe this is gonna have a high age, maybe it's gonna have a high proof, something like that. So let's go to the nose now and see what we get. All right, guys, so this whiskey smells wonderful on the nose. It has a very kind of classic, older Kentucky bourbon sort of profile. I feel like I'm getting a lot of like darker fruit sorts of notes, like black cherry, and it's somewhere between like a fresh black cherry and a dry black cherry. It's not candied, it's not as bright as being like a candied fruit note, but it's definitely in that like darker fruit realm, and it's got a little bit of that dry factor to it. But in addition to that kind of underpinning of dark fruit, there's also just a ton of like antique oak, antique leather sorts of notes. It reminds me of like an older Heaven Hill or an older Jim Beam product because it's not overtly sweet. It's got a little bit of like this savory oakiness, like savory bittersweetness to the profile on the nose. Whereas, if I was talking about like a Buffalo Trace product or maybe even an MGP product, I might find a little bit more of an overt sweetness to the fruit notes and to the profile overall. But there's none of that here. This feels like it spent a lot of time in the barrel, and it feels like it's really developed kind of a darker, richer, but also oakier and more bittersweet profile overall. So first impression on the nose is a really, really good one. Let's go back and keep digging in now. Yeah, so as I go back to the nose now, I'm actually starting to pick up something that's a little bit interesting. It's kind of like this perfumed, slightly floral blackberry note. And usually with a profile like this, when you have this much oak and this much leather, like what a lot of people are gonna call like a rick house kind of profile. It's like when you walk into a rick house in Kentucky, especially an older rick house, there's just a certain smell in the air from all the whiskey and all the old barrels and stuff. And so usually when you get that kind of profile, at least in my opinion, I don't usually associate that with also finding like a floral note. Floral feels more like Four Roses, maybe some MGPs, and honestly like younger whiskey. But this has a layer in the whiskey that's got this like perfumed and floral blackberry component to it. So overall, I think the way to wrap this up on the nose before we go to the palate is just to say this. It's a very dark whiskey with a nicely sort of like aged oak, aged leather kind of profile. There are many layers here between the fruit notes, both dried and somewhat fresh. There's like a bittersweetness, there's a savoriness to it, and there's also this floral component. And so you're getting a lot of different things going on in the glass, but it doesn't feel disjunct. It feels like it's put together very well. It feels like all those layers are working together. I feel like it's probably gonna be pretty heavy-handed on the palate because it is such an insanely like dark and rich kind of profile. So here we go, let's go to the palate now and see what we get. Cheers. Oh man, this is absolutely gonna get a high rating from me in this video. This whiskey is so rich and so deep. And where I feel like some whiskeys this year, like the Knob Creek 21, for instance, have felt just slightly anemic, slightly too thin, very great profiles, but like there's just a little bit of something missing. This whiskey kind of fills in the gaps for that. And this doesn't have quite as oaky and quite as old of a profile as maybe like a Knob Creek 21, but I don't think that would preclude it from maybe doing even better as far as a rating goes. And I think that whiskey for me was in like the lower 90s. Right away, after I've smelled this whiskey, my mind is already in the 90s for my own rating system. And now that I've tasted it, my mind is in like the, 93 to 95 kind of range. I mean, I think this is an outstanding profile for whatever it is. It feels like an old Kentucky bourbon, but that first sip for me, we'll dive a little deeper into the notes and the experience here after a second sip, but that first one was just like, is this thing gonna show up? The way it showed up on the nose, is it gonna show up that way on the palate? The answer is a resounding yes. Very, very impressive stuff. I can't wait to figure out what this is, but let's go back to the palate now for a second sip. Wow, I tell you guys what, the amount of leather in here is just outstanding. And I think for me, when you have a really, really old whiskey, one of my favorite notes in an older whiskey, besides just like a huge dose of oak, which is always great, and that can be bitter, that can be sweet, that can be savory, it can be a lot of different things with the oak component. But with a leather note, if you get that like worn, aged, antique kind of leather thing going on, that is one of my all-time favorite notes in whiskey. And now as I'm getting into the finish, which is a very long finish considering the fact that this doesn't feel like it doesn't feel like it's a super high proof. It feels like it's kind of an in-between, 115, 120 kind of proof. The finish is going on forever, but as I'm sitting now in the finish and talking through it, tobacco all day, which is kind of like swooping in underneath that leather note, those like drier, dark, black cherry notes that are in here, a little bit of a prune element, and also, just all sorts of these dark fruits like blackberries that I talked about on the nose. All of that hanging out in this longer finish. Just awesome whiskey. Seriously awesome whiskey. And I think probably a contender for like a top 10 pour of the year. So before I give this a rating, I am gonna do one more quick sip, but I'm telling you what, this is very, very exciting stuff. All right, so after that third sip, the whiskey does get a little bit thinner on the palate. You kind of get used to all the oak, all the leather, thins out just a little bit. That's always to be expected to a small degree, depending on the whiskey. And the truly great whiskeys, stay consistent sip to sip, and they keep that intensity up each and every time you go back to the glass. For this one, that's my only knock, is that it fell off a little bit on that third sip. It's a very small complaint. And I think I'm still in the low 90 kind of range here. So I'm gonna give this a big score. I'm gonna give this, whatever it is, a 93 out of 100. 93, I think it's a very complete whiskey overall. It feels like it's got great age. I really don't know what it is. It reminds me of that older Heaven Hill or older Jim Beam kind of profile. Like it's got at least 15 years on it. And if it doesn't, then that would be really, really cool. But a whiskey like this with this kind of rating, before I do the reveal, if the price on this is up to like a $250 to $275 price point, I think that's about the value that I see myself assigning to this when I give a score like a 93. So let's go now to this reveal card and let's see what we've been working with today. If I can get the reveal card out, here we go. Oh man, okay. So Wild Turkey Beacon. Wild Turkey Beacon, 118 proof. So I said it felt like between 115 and 120. It is 118 proof. It's a blend of 10 and 16 year. This tracks, I was gonna do this review for this bottle, like not in a blind tasting format. I was gonna do this as a standalone video where I know what I'm tasting, but I didn't get around to it before now. And so it's actually pretty cool that I did this blind, because a lot of folks have been asking, hey man, when are you gonna review Beacon? Put it next to Russell's 15, put it next to Camp Nelson E, Camp Nelson F, Generations. And I think I probably do have a massive blind flight brewing in my future between all those bottles. But for this review of this Beacon, I think the price on this was $250 or $300. It was one of the two. I think Master's Keep has crept up quite a bit over the years. I think the price is right. I think it's an even value for what you get. This is an outstanding whiskey. Truly, it really is. The other thing in my mind that I thought this could have been as I tasted it, and I didn't say it out loud, was lineage. I felt like it had a little bit of that element of that older Beam. Like I said, older Beam, older Heaven Hill. But in this case, it's actually turkey. And so the blackberry note and the slightly floral component, along with those drier dark fruits and lots of leather, lots of tobacco, like all of this tracks as we talk about older turkey products. We talk about the turkey funk that a lot of us, will find on these things, especially Russell's 15, some Dusties, and now this Beacon as well. I think it's a great bottle. I really do. Secondary, I think is like $400, $450. I don't love the price for that, but when you put this up against Russell's 15, which is going to the moon right now on secondary, it's $750 and climbing, which I think is hilarious. This artificial price inflation that we're seeing on the secondary market for that one. you know, Beacon ends up being kind of the more value buy, even though I don't think it's quite as good as Russell's 15. I'm actually very surprised. I was like really thinking this has got to be Heaven Hill. It's got to be Jim Beam. But it's a Wild Turkey product, and it's a really good one at that, with a very solid score and a definite top 10 contender of this year. So cheers, guys, and I'll see you next time here on Drums and Drams.